which would include the hiring criteria, stakeholder involvement, and procedures. First, I'd just like to thank Director Princeton for all the work getting this information organized for us, checking with the School Board Association. It was very helpful, that information, so I appreciate that. There are notes from MSBA that Bonnie put together. I hope you all had a chance to look those over. And some very useful information in there. And,
if I may, I'd like to move to page 2, item number 3, on Bonnie's notes. I would like to make the recommendation that the board designate Laura Hahn as your contact or the person that should be receiving the applications.
Is Hahn willing?
Yes.
It's okay.
someone wish to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I wish them second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No?
And then on page 3, underneath the first special meeting, second paragraph, a side note from Director Princeton. She indicated that she felt it would be a good idea to survey our staff, and I would support that as well. And that survey is found on page 7 of your packet here this evening. And I think it would be advantageous for us to survey the staff, as Director Princeton indicated to you as a board. And so we could facilitate that through the development of a Google Doc, and then that would automatically record input and feedback from your staff, and I think they would appreciate that as well. So I would be very supportive of you doing that survey.
Yeah, it's a good idea. The wider net we cast, the better, I think, getting input from the staff and the administration and the public.
So with the board's permission, I will ask Laura to go ahead and create that Google Docs, and we will try to get that out to our teaching staff here in the very near future.
Teaching staff or everybody?
All
Every
employees,
staff, right?
yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
that's what I intended.
When do we want that due, or do you want me to have the results for the next meeting, the special meeting, or the regular meeting, or?
It seems to me, when Sandy talked about it, she said it can be helpful, especially with interview questions, so I would think that's not really
Real
urgent.
urgent, yeah.
So I mean, I think it, we won't be interviewing yet for a little while, so I don't know that it has to be a rush. I don't know, what does anybody else think?
I would think if you had them by the end of the month, that would be prudent. So it gives us a little time.
So by the December meeting, then we probably have the results.
Talked about a timeline.
You know, one thing though, we may want to, did we really decide definitively who was our committee, our hiring committee? Because it seems to me at our last meeting, we talked about several options, but then Sandy strongly recommended that the entire board should be the committee as elected representatives, and she seemed to suggest there were legal ramifications with having people not in the school board involved as far as reviewing files and things like that. But I don't know that we ever made a decision as a group that that was what we wanted to do.
It seems prudent to follow her recommendations and the fact that the public can be involved at any meeting.
Yeah.
They're all open meetings.
Right.
So a board, and how about the 2 principals?
Well, if I may, I'm going to interject on how some interviews are done in neighboring school districts, and they generally have three entities that are formed. One is obviously the board would be an entity where all of you are present and you can do that. And then to have teachers, paras, and other, maybe a custodian and a tech director and your technology people involved. So that would be one group. And then, so when the interview process is taking place, those entities would also be involved in the process. So, and then the other group would be the district office personnel along with the building principals and the community ed director. So you'd actually have three different groups that they would sit in for a 45-minute interview process before they came to the board as well. And then,
Oh, okay.
and then when you finalize that, you would get input from all three entities and do a tabulation of the candidate that they selected. And then to follow that up, you know, you're going to go out and do a site visit, so you'd pick one person from each one of those, and maybe two board members, but maybe a couple committee members, and then those, say there's 5 or 6 individuals would go out and do the follow-up and do the site visit, instead of the whole large committee, obviously.
So you're saying they would have like a pre-interview, one 45-minute pre-interview with these three groups, or?
Well, they would, yeah, they would have interviews with the teacher group, if we could call it that, and then the district office personnel, and then they would come in here and be interviewed by the board.
So they have like a total of 4 interviews in one day?
3.
Or- Okay. Oh, the board was one group, I'm sorry. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I brought it up to Sandy a couple of times because the first time I called her, my big question was the makeup of the committee. And she kept saying, we don't advise that, but she said, if you do have anybody that's not a board member that's going to serve on the committee, they have to understand they're in an advisory position only. And then I would want to get from her, I guess, that, like I said, the legal ramifications that at early on before we, well, I think at any time until we have the selection, they're not allowed to look at files, you know, so I'm thinking that.
No, I'm not advocating that. I'm
Okay.
advocating that you as a board would decide who your finalists are going to be, that you make that decision, and then you allow your other groups to be involved in the final selection based on what you come up with finalists.
So at that point, they still wouldn't be looking at files, but they would base it on an interview, and they would make recommendations to the board.
I would see nothing wrong with them looking at the individual's resume so that they have a little background and familiarity with that individual that they're going to be interviewing.
The initial screening would be done by the whole board, is that?
Correct. Mhm.
I would check with her again, or I will if you want me to, or you can too, because I wondered, I thought, how did we do it the last time? Because I seem to remember all kinds of people being involved in asking interview questions, and I thought looking over the files, and Sandy seemed to be saying, all of your meetings are open, but beyond that, you have to be so careful about the information that you're.
Well, I read through your notes as well with due diligence, read them twice, to be honest with you. She stressed to you, you know, on page 2, item number 5, where she stressed to you to be discreet in your, how you want to handle that, and that's why I thought Laura would be an excellent person to facilitate how you want to move with that, because technically, as you work through that process, depending on the applicants, they're going to remove the names, detect the names, and then you're just going to read about that individual. So, but once you finalize that, you know, and I think it would be prudent for you, depending on the number of applicants you get, is to keep it within that 3 to 5 range, no more than 5. So,
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how it's so, and these other 2 groups would have their own questions that they would ask in there. And
Yeah.
we'd have to have some format, would we want them to, some format for them to give their, you know, whatever their advising is on,
Sure, and
us to us?
as I envision that to work is that they would have a set of questions and then they would do a tally, say it's, each question is worth 10 points, if that's what they use. And then they tally, and then they would actually give you their recommendation as to why they're choosing the candidate they chose as the finalist.
So they're kind of having their own little search process in a way, or they'd be writing their own questions, right?
They could.
trying to keep us away from having to write 3
Yeah.
sets of interview questions, or, I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with them using, I don't want to say duplicate, but for them to use the same type of questions, and they may have other questions as a group that they want to facilitate directly based on curriculum work that they would ask this individual to do. So,
Do you remember, was that how we did your interviews? Did you have like interviews with several groups on the same day?
I remember coming in to a full board meeting, and I remember Val being there, and I remember there were teachers involved in the board meeting as well, and they all had questions that they asked of me, in addition to the full board. And the building principals were in attendance,
Okay,
yeah.
but that was separate meeting, it wasn't one just.
No,
one
it was one meeting.
Oh, okay.
I was on the community.
Well, that's what I thought we had a committee that was a lot more active than I guess what Sandy is telling me. Sandy should be, so
Yeah,
I'm,
correct me if I'm wrong, though, Val, everybody that was involved in the interview was at that particular meeting.
Yeah, we were picked
Mhm.
to be.
And they were given the ability to ask questions of each candidate that came in. Do you remember how many candidates they had it narrowed down to?
4, I think. 4.
Okay. So you could do that, I mean, you could do that approach too. You could select and have those individuals present and allow them to give you their input when they're all said and done. You know, you could do just one large interview, and
Yeah, I think that'd be better than 4
Yeah.
different ones.
although the beauty about having that within a 45-minute is that, let's say the district personnel are going to be looking for specific things that
Yeah,
facilitate the ability to work with that individual, and they might get a little better read of that person
Mhm.
where they,
So the whole process is 45 minutes? I'm sorry if I seem slow. but
no, each one of those interviews would be approximately
Okay.
45 minutes in length, and then
I'd be a mess by the end of 3 45-minute interviews.
that's pretty common, to be honest with you, yeah.
I wonder about the groups providing a recommendation for one individual, because if the board
Well, they-
is not,
Right.
maybe it would be better for them to share the results of their.
They could rank the individuals depending on how many you have, yep.
Or even, I mean, what if, instead of saying it's 3 interviews, what if the candidates just have a brief meeting with these other groups, and that those groups can talk about whatever they want to talk about, and then write up, recommendations, strengths and weaknesses, or, but I know what Joyce is saying, if the outside groups, if these other 2 groups each choose somebody as their first choice, and the board feels otherwise and chooses someone else, then it's probably going to have conflict and.
Well, I think as a board, it would be in your best interest to take that, whatever.
I want their feedback.
Yeah, whatever they're providing you as input is, that's between you as board members, but to take that into
Of
consideration.
course,
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, you don't have to decide tonight, that's, we have Angela Olsted Shepherd here, and we have Chrissy Kelly here representing the teachers. You'd be welcome to ask either one of them, and Laura's here as part of the district personnel. You could ask any one of those 3 how they envision it to work, and if they feel that would be advantageous as well.
Maybe we should look at that timeline, kind of look at as John said, does it look realistic? I think it would be nice if we had, if we could agree on a timeline, maybe by next week when we meet, that this will be when this is the deadline for applications, this is when
Yeah.
we interview.
I found it interesting that Sandy indicated to you she wanted to move it up by a month, which was rather interesting, but,
Yeah, she said that it's standard practice to give applicants 2 months to apply, so that by the time you announce it, the deadline should be 2 months out there. So she was
Well,
kind of
then-
looking at that, but then she said in the end, she said, once you get going on this procedure, I don't know if it's just her personal preference or what, but she said, you're better off just continue going, don't take 2 weeks off in between stages. And I think the reason she wanted to move up signing the contract was partly based on that there are so many districts looking for a superintendent this year that.
it makes sense. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with her, so, you know, if you were, I don't know if you have a copy of this last one I gave you in the September board packet. If not, I can ask Laura to get
Because, and I
on.
did send that to her, well, you don't have to do it, I know.
You want to go on the copies?
And she liked that, she just wanted to move it together.
Yeah, and I understand that. There's lots of flexibility there to move that up. And I can appreciate what she's saying to you and recommending that, move the process along sometime.
And the first step is to cast as big a net as possible and get the applicants. I mean, we can sort out how we do it, depending on how many applicants we get too. I mean,
Right.
that could be a factor in how we decide to go.
Did she indicate to you that MSBA would facilitate the mailing out of the electronic document?
Yeah, I put that in my second bit of notes, that was the first thing I asked her, now I don't remember exactly what she said. There are some things they will do, and there are some things they'll do for a fee. So,
I didn't see it in this.
it's in the second batch of notes that I took, I thought Laura included those. It was the very first thing in those notes. Let's see. It's way at the back, okay, notes from second phone conversation, this was just on Friday.
Okay,
And so she recommended the 3 places to post it, MSBA, Superintendent's Association, and are you a member of that, Mr. Ayler?
what?
Of the Superintendent's Association?
Yes.
Okay, so she said that, and then Ed
Ed
Post
Post,
were the
yeah.
3 places
Okay,
that generally they surveyed where candidates saw them. And about the only other thing we can do for free is that we can request current mailing labels, and then it would go out to all the districts. But we would have to mail them, you know, we
Really?
can get the labels.
sure. They don't, because a lot of times what's happening now is it goes out electronically.
Do they have a website or something?
Yeah, they'll put it on their website as well. They'll put it on their website, and I suppose they would put the brochure on the website too. But they won't send it out.
No, that's understandable, but they still recommend that you mail it?
I don't know that she was recommending that, I just asked her, what can we do for free? And she said, you can request mailing labels.
Okay.
So I don't know, I guess I don't really know whether, I don't have a good feel for whether you need to send things on mail anymore.
Well, that's just under 400 districts in the state, so.
That could be their expense.
Because the out-of-state people would be interested in it.
Right, that's true.
If you put it on the website, that could be mailing it
And
out.
they will send it out by email to all of their members, and that's $500. So that is, maybe we want to think about that, maybe it would be cheaper for us to do that than to snail mail.
Well, snail mail is, just under, is $200, just in
Okay.
postage.
And then printing these things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that, she basically told me the 3 places she thinks we should put it, and that those would be free. And if we wanted to do a mailing, we could get labels for free, or they'd have the service. And they would send emails every other week until the deadline, the application deadline, for $500. So that would be several times. And yeah, I guess I was thinking, after talking to her, I thought it'd be nice if we could make our decision next week at our meeting and send it out, officially post it. Because it'll be close to the 15th by then, and we would like applications in January.
Yeah, guidelines were the 11th of January, we wanted everything in.
Yeah, I guess I would invite you to look over the brochure that Mrs. Lawson put together. And again, my thanks and appreciation to her for the time and effort she's put into that. It's very colorful, very well done. We gleaned a lot of the information that we have received, I've received over the years from districts that are doing a superintendent search, so that's a culmination of those, and so commend her for the time and effort she's put into that, and then she's enlisted Laura's feedback and input as well as Tony's. We have a little bit of data yet that we need to enter into that, but I would say if you could look this over and have this ready to go, finalize this for us at
By next week.
next Tuesday, so that then we can move forward with getting the printing done, and if we're gonna move forward with mailing it out to every district.
We have one duplicate picture from
Did I didn't see that. I didn't read the word.
cafeteria.
Cafeteria, one has students in it and one doesn't, yeah. Yeah, you're right. There's a duplicate picture, so we could come up with another picture there. I'm more inclined to have one with students actively utilizing the space, so
Yeah.
appreciate you catching that.
But you're right, we should be ready to approve that next Tuesday.
Yep. And once we get the other final information, we can send it out to all the board members so they have it and can facilitate that.
Well, and that, it does include the timeline, so, you know, part of approving this will be that we've agreed this is our timeline.
Well, and that's what I think it would be advantageous for us to kind of finalize that this evening if we could. And Laura made you copies, so if you want to take a look at this, or if you want to look at the back, I'm okay with that. But if you're
Yeah,
gonna,
this
if
one,
you-
this one in the brochure is, I think that's the moved up one that Sandy recommended where we,
And it is helpful for you to know that your February board meeting is the last Monday in February. So that would be the 25th of February. So if you wanted to finalize, make that your final recommendation for approval, board approval on February 25th. So we want to start at the bottom and work back?
let's see.
Yes, no? So February 25th, is it going to be your approval date?
Let's see. Oh, okay, I had us down for February 19th regular board meeting.
No, because of President's Day, we don't meet. In January and February, we meet on the 4th,
Oh,
except for
okay.
the reorganization meeting we do on the first Monday in January. But then the other two regular board meetings are the 4th Monday of the month. January date is January 28th.
I don't know, what's the first Monday, what's the day of that one?
The reorganization meeting would be January 7th.
So the 28th, you said was the regular January.
Right.
And the 7th would be the.
The organizational meeting. So one of the things you could do is, again, if that's what you're inclined to do, is have the applications due by January 4th rather than the 11th, to give you additional time there. Because if they go out in November, that gives them almost 6 weeks to get their application in.
Well, so again, I'm looking at Sandy's because she had a couple extra steps in here, I think. And she had us, board members, arrange times to come in and review the week of January 14th to the 22nd.
Right.
So January 11th could still be the deadline unless that's not enough time, you're thinking for like Laura to put things together?
No, I'm very confident that as they come in, she'll get them organized for you and have everything ready to roll.
What day of the week is the 11th?
It's a Friday. I'm okay with that.
Listen, I'm curious to hear from Joyce and Val. You know, part of my motivation in doing this is that I thought, you know, I'm hoping as a board, we should try to own this process, and I feel like we've been spoiled for 11 years. We've relied on Chuck to do everything for us, and I mean everything. And I just feel like it's sad we can't rely on him to organize his own replacement search. So I guess one of my goals was to have the board, you know, take ownership and decide how this will work. So I'm curious in hearing from Val and Joyce about timelines, or if you have any thoughts on those things.
Let me clarify just one thing. Laura is my right-hand person, so she's highly responsible for providing you what you need as a board. And
So we're not leaving
again,
you too much, is what you're
in this
saying.
whole process, you know, she's going to be invested in it, and she's going to be able to assist you as you make your way through it. And maybe you don't want to take 2 full weeks to do the review of applicants. Maybe you want to say the week of the 14th through the 18th is, we're going to give you, set it up, and you come in at times that, even in the evenings, we could set up the conference room so that you could come in and review the applicants, the applications.
I think the reason I put down the 22nd must be because it's a Tuesday, but that 21st is that holiday.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm not sure how hard it'll be.
And that works as well, because then you have the weekend. It's not to rule out you can't come in on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon to review.
I wonder if the 11th to the 14th is a little bit short to expect Laura to have it should be ready, because that's over the weekend.
Again, I'm really confident that all the applications are going to be in prior to,
Okay.
Yeah.
by the
You
4th
would
of
think
January.
not many would come in on the 11th.
You know, and again, I think as,
Would there
I don't want to speak for Laura, but as they come in, I know that that's what her organizational sequence would be, is to date them and then get them ready to go, so that once they're ready to roll out for you as board members, she would
Well,
have
and
that
there's nothing
organized.
saying that we can't, if we set aside that 14th to the 22nd to review them, there's nothing saying that when it comes to that time, if we're swamped, we could start them on the 16th, you know, we could give a few extra days. For
Okay, so
Laura.
you want to maintain, you want to stay with the January 11th due date, and then set January 14th through the 22nd as your reviews. And how soon would you like to start the interview process then? Are you thinking the week of January 21st? Or no, I'm sorry, the week of the 28th?
Well, let's see, we have a regular board meeting 28th, so that's probably where we'll maybe decide on our finalists.
Okay.
So then somebody would need time to schedule them. And that was a point again where Sandy said, once you make your decision on the finalists, just schedule those interviews as soon as possible. And again, I'm not sure why, but she said, in fact, just start scheduling them that Thursday and Friday.
Well, it's good you want to get good candidates, you want to start
Right,
locking them in.
yeah.
I mean, you want to make sure they're thinking about it.
Right.
I guess I would be more inclined for you as board members when you're going through the applications. I don't know if it requires board action for you to finalize, but each one of the board members would say, here are my 5 finalists, and give that information to Laura, so that's already ready to go. So the week of the 28th, you could be doing interviews already, because you have your finalists.
My impression was that we do have to discuss that at a meeting, but that's where we're talking about them as like applicant 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C,
Okay?
and that we have to deliberate as a board. I mean, we should all come in with our page of notes, but I think then we should, that is a discussion open to the public. I thought that was the whole point of not using their names. I guess I like that better than just, so you're saying that we could rank our finalists, hand them to Laura, and she'll add them up and tell them, here's your top.
Here are your top 5 or 3, whatever you decide. I didn't see where she said that it had to be board approved.
What I thought so. I guess, you know, whether or not she said it, personally, I would like that. I would, you know, sometimes when you're by yourself, you're thinking, well, I don't know, I like this and that, but then, you know, Val might have something that she says at the meeting based on her experience that changes my mind about, you know, something that I didn't realize was a strength. I would value that time to deliberate as a board. And again, that's just my personal thinking, and maybe not everybody feels that way.
She said,
She said, okay, well, this.
decide on page 4, at the top there, she said January 22nd. Obviously, she's not aware that we don't meet on the 22nd.
And she, yeah. Well, she did say earlier on in her, on page 2, where we select our person, she said this person needs to assign each applicant a letter
Right.
or a number so that the board can refer to applicants at the open meeting without using their names or any other identifying information. And the only possible meeting that could be is when we're deciding on finalists.
Your finalists, okay. So January 28th it is.
I don't, well, what did Joyce and Val think? Do you want to discuss candidates as a board at an open meeting, or would you rather just rank them and submit it
Well,
to decide finalists?
if we came prepared with the 5 we think are the best, and then, I mean, those could be shared. But then at the same time, we should be discussing them as a board.
Well, I'm gonna be,
Choose the
I think so.
I'm gonna push the envelope for a little bit, as much as I'm not. I'll be careful so Laura doesn't throw anything at me, but you could easily have a special meeting on the 22nd of January to say, we're gonna decide on our finalists so that you can move forward with that final week in January of scheduling your interviews.
Now, isn't that the holiday?
No, the 21st is a holiday. The 22nd is not.
22nd Tuesday?
Yes. But I think in order to facilitate, you know, moving, if you're going to finalize everything by the end of February, you're gonna need more than, you're gonna need a month in there to get things, by the time you get your finalists determined and your interviews conducted and a site visit completed, all within 30 days, you're pressing the envelope pretty hard. So I don't think you can wait until the 28th to
Okay.
make that selection.
That's fine with me. But will everybody have, oh yeah, that was the end of our reviewing session, or section was the 22nd, so,
That gives us a little over a week.
yeah. And so that is a Tuesday. Yeah. Yeah, and she said often in her experience, there are board members in reviewing the applications just before that meeting, where they decide. That night, the night of whatever meeting we're making the decision, there are often board members in there just prior to the meeting, so. So a special meeting the 22nd is what you're suggesting?
I'm just recommending to you, I don't think you can wait till the 28th, because
Okay.
especially with the time frame of, unless you want to choose
In the letter.
yeah, especially, unless you want to choose a date in March where you're not waiting until the end of March. Maybe you want a special board meeting to say, we're going to select our finalists on this date and not.
I would like to speak for the 22nd of January because I won't be here at the meeting.
I think then, we should do the 22nd. And Sandy did say be ready for lots of special meetings because you can't do this without. And the tricky thing is they all have to be open, so we have to make sure we get things posted.
We need a quorum too, I would imagine.
You have some,
I'll try to call in.
The 22nd should work.
So you will be here the 22nd.
Yeah.
big things we'll have to do at the January 20th regular meeting, right? So maybe we should plan, it's probably good to move that decision earlier. So then, Mr. Ayler, are you thinking that if we make our decision the 22nd, so that and is it Laura that calls them to set up interviews?
Yes.
Are you thinking then we should be able to tentatively plan on that January 31st?
I would say the 30th or 31st, yes, you could, and the 1st, if you wanted to facilitate, or maybe even that second week.
And Sandy had said even you could include Saturday, February 2nd as an alternative day or a snow day if there are people that can't come during the week. I don't know if that happens or not.
Just an FYI for board members, that's our legislative breakfast on that day, so on February 2nd, that Saturday. And that's always a good one to be in attendance at. Sponsored by Southeast Service Cooperative does it. So I'm thinking that by February 8th, you want to have everything, you want to complete your interviews.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
And then that gives you the 11th, the week of the 11th and 18th to do your site visits and reflect on that, and gives you some latitude there as well. So maybe maybe we should say that by the 30th through the February 7th is when you want to complete your interviews.
now Sandy had also recommended don't skip the second interview.
Correct.
If you're leading
Yeah.
candidates, so I don't know where that's fitting into that whole
Well, and
crowded area.
I think that's, as a board, then that gives you, not only does it give you a chance to do the site visit, but it also gives you the opportunity there to say, we'd like
The second interview?
a second interview. And then you could narrow it down to 2 finalists if you choose to, or 3, whatever you choose to. Maybe that's one of those where you do some follow-up questions and ask for clarifications and
Okay, we got a plan?
You need motions on anything tonight or wait till next week?
I would think we should maybe wait, this is the planning meeting and we'll finalize it.
But can
next meeting.
we kind of firm up this timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should firm up the timeline, but I
Because
don't
then
know.
we'd want to include that in the brochure.
Right.
Yeah. So, I'm not hearing
That's
any
true.
objections then to your final choice on February 25th? Of February? That would be your board action to approve?
Yep,
It'd be a regular board meeting.
Right.
yep. And
Yep.
we would probably have a special meeting prior to that, where we actually make our selection, I'm thinking. And she had written down determine contract parameters, negotiate employment, but I suppose that's, not really, we have a committee that does that probably, so.
No, you can do that after you make the suggestion.
So I mean, before the February 25th meeting, we would know who we were hiring, that will be just the official approval.
So,
Okay.
you're gonna complete your review of applicants, and then you're gonna ask that interviews be set up from January 30th through, what did they say, February?
Either the first or the second, depending on if we want to go into Saturday.
Through February 7th, or do you want to go through the 9th, through February 9th, which is a Saturday?
We've got site visits from the 5th to the 8th.
Oh.
No, we have to adjust
Is
that.
changed?
Yeah.
So you're saying we need a longer period of interviews than what I had just 3 days, try to fit them into 3 days, but
I think
You
you're,
think we
yeah,
need a
I think
week or more?
in light of everybody's schedule, I think,
that is going to be, I was wondering how that'll work. I mean, those of us with jobs, especially on the
that's
town.
why I'm saying January 30th through February 7th would give you the flexibility.
And especially, yeah, you're right, if we're letting applicants know that's the period of interviewing, then,
Give them more flexibility too.
right.
And you have to get your rosaries out, make sure they're on the clothesline, we don't have a snowstorm in one of those days as well.
So you said 7.
It works for rain, I hope it works for snow. Oh, that's a Catholic thing, I'm sorry.
And then between the 7th and the 11th, we would have to have second interviews as well.
Well, that's where, you know, the week of the 11th could be your site visit. You know, if you narrow it down to two applicants. And then the 18th, the week of the 18th, you could invite them back for interviews if you need to.
So you're right, that is getting close to, I don't know if that will give us time for a special meeting prior to the 25th.
Why would you need a special meeting prior to the 25th?
So you're saying we're going to make our decision on who we're hiring on the 25th and vote right then?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, I haven't done this before. I was just, she thought there would be a meeting prior to that. I don't know what we do to determine contract parameters. Is that just something that's, our negotiating committee works on that outside of the regular meeting, or?
I don't know, I think we should meet with the finalists. I mean, maybe they applied in more than one place, and if we aren't sure that they're going to take the job.
I did think that'd be a question for Sandy, Bonnie, is it just to say, how would you recommend we do this? Because it's not uncommon for boards to make offers and then to work out the details of the contract after
That's pretty
you,
typical.
yeah, after you've
Okay.
selected that finalist. And then they can always turn it down and then
Right.
you go to your second finalist.
So you're saying on the 25th, we can make the offer?
You could offer the position to pending negotiations, contractual negotiations.
So we're kind of assuming just through this whole process, we already kind of know by the 25th who we choose. We don't really need to sit and talk about it
Right.
or anything. Okay,
At that point, yeah. we-
all right. Because we could still have 2 finalists at that point.
Right.
Or I guess, you know, you just don't know. There's so much of this that is unknown. Okay. So I will ask her, do we need to have the contract and everything ready for the meeting on the 25th where we approve, well, if we approve the contract?
No, you're going to approve the offer, you're not.
We're not approving,
approving-
okay, approving the offer.
Yeah. Or making the final selection and approving the offer of the contract. And then let your negotiation committee work with that individual.
Would they typically accept before they've done that meeting with the negotiating committee, or
Most of them will say pending.
they'll wait? Okay.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting to see what Sandy recommends to you
All right.
as well.
I told her to expect more calls, so, and she's open to that.
So if you will allow me, I'll just kind of review the application process. So as far as mailing out the flyers, we're still shooting for that last week in November. The deadline for applications due is January 11th. Then January 14th through the 22nd is review of applicants, and your goal is no more than 5. Then January 30th through February 7th would be your opportunity to conduct the interviews. And then February 11th through the 15th is determine who's going to do the site visits and to get those completed. And then February 18th through the 22nd, second interviews if needed. And I'm not sure how you facilitate that, because maybe you do a site visit. And then you have other questions or concerns.
As far as the applicants, if they start coming in sooner, I mean, nothing prevents us from looking at them sooner too, I mean.
Well, that was my only question with what you just said, Chuck, was, you said the last week of November. After next week, there's nothing stopping us from posting it except just getting all the stuff together. I would like it if we could post it even before the last week of November. I mean, later next week.
Oh, we can post it right after the next board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I might have misheard you. I thought
If
you
you
said
want
something like we'll
to,
post
but
it.
if you want to coordinate, which would be advantageous as well, then we need to move forward with getting this finalized
Right.
sooner than later.
Tonight.
And have this ready to go, and then it might be prudent for you to say to Laura, then, yes, we're going to seek the mailing labels from MSBA.
I have no idea whether we should do that or not. So what does anyone else think?
Because
Mail it
that,
out or just do it all electronic?
again, I'm just going back to what Sandy, in your second email, did you
Yeah.
say? And that's in the back of your packet?
And like I said, she wasn't necessarily recommending we mail them, but I just asked her what kind of services they had that they wouldn't charge us for, and she said you can get current mailing labels. But if you think that would be cost prohibitive, I
But the
think.
mailing would go only to current superintendents?
No, it goes to every school district. in the
To every
state.
school
Okay, it goes
district,
to
yeah.
every school district.
What about Iowa and Wisconsin?
Yeah.
No, you have to rely on Ed Post and the Superintendent's Association.
I don't know how much people rely on mailings anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe we just get the mailing.
I think.
In that case though, would you want to spend $500 to have MSBA?
I think Iowa has similar to Ed Post, where you can post things for a nominal fee. We could do some checking on that.
We're in Wisconsin
That'd be good.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Close by.
Yep. We can do some checking on that.
Especially northeast and southeast.
Right.
Yeah, they have different finances, they figure to finances differently, don't they?
Yeah.
Each state, so be a learning curve.
If they're qualified in another state,
No
they have to
comment.
get recertified in Minnesota.
Oh, that's a good question.
The best advice I can give you is to reassure any candidate that Minnesota does not follow a KISS principle when it comes to school.
Yep.
Whoa.
So if they're, John just said, if they're certified in another state, do they have to be also certified in Minnesota?
They, generally, it's not an issue.
It's not.
Yeah. Just make sure that you've been,
So can we just cross out the idea of mailing labels and we're not going to go that route?
I think
Sounds like-
so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. If somebody's looking there.
We'll post it on those sites,
I
yeah.
don't know where to find it.
Well, and she said that those are the 3 that most candidates use, so I think that's fine too.
Then have Mr. Elder look for Iowa.
Yeah.
Iowa and Wisconsin.
For,
And then what about the emails that MSBA is willing to send out? Do you want that?
I just crossed those out too. but
You
that's-
did? Okay.
But I don't know.
They
I-
wanted $500 to do that? or-
Yeah,
I don't know.
and it would only go to, I'm assuming, all the school districts in Minnesota.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
I think if someone is looking to change positions, they're going to be looking for
right,
information. You
Yeah.
don't know.
It's-
I agree.
yeah, the word will be out, I mean, they must.
The word is already out. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, go there.
Inquiries have been made already.
Okay. Everybody understands what the timeline is?
Pretty much.
Can I ask a question, or is this not the time? I don't know how this all works. It's nothing. My question is,
Yeah, go ahead.
so like you have the teachers and paras, custodians, those that interview committee, when do you want, is there a timeline for when you want that set? Like the names of the teachers that'll be on the committee or the para, the custodian?
I think first they have to decide if they want to include that
Okay.
in the process.
Would it be okay if I ask Sandy that
Sure.
before next Tuesday? Just say
Yeah.
that this is what we're thinking of doing, what do you recommend?
The other option you would have is to have, as Mrs. Kelly indicated here this evening, is make sure that all the district personnel are here and they're present, and then you could just ask them to rank those individuals as well as teachers and para and custodian. You could have all of those present, and they can hear all the same questions, and they can form an opinion, and then they can rank that individual, and then turn that into you as a board. And then you have each of those three entities, you'd have those two entities plus the board's consensus as who their top two finalists are.
Could I ask Ms. Kelly a question?
Sure.
So what do you, as far as, would you see faculty involvement? Do you think you prefer having like your own interview where you get to ask questions and then provide kind of your feedback? Or does it sound more inviting to, would you like to be part of just the big interview and rank candidates or share that way?
I think that as long as the teachers are involved, I think they'll be happy with whatever, but I know there are teachers that would like to be on the committee, and I'm sure they have questions that they would like to ask. So it would be nice if they were able to answer questions, but I also think they would be okay if even they could just listen to the answer. I think we'd be okay either way, but I know there are staff that would like to ask questions.
And we could certainly solicit questions from staff as
And
we're
maybe that-
preparing for interviews too. Yeah, because I think we'd probably like help formulating questions.
Anything else? Anybody, any concerns or questions? We'll be here again
Next Tuesday,
next Tuesday.
5:30?
5:30.
And our
So Mr. Yeller could get this all,
I have the, we reviewed the timeline, so I'm good to go on the timeline.
and we're here again 2 weeks from tonight for our regular meeting. So, we confirm all this up.
Yeah, we can certainly include this next Tuesday, and we can give you the final. Yep. And then you can, if you own a red pen, you're welcome to go after
Yeah, I
it.
was just gonna say, I'll go through it, only just looking for errors, I like to edit, so
Sure.
sometimes after
Well,
you've looked at
and
something.
Joyce has
yourself-
already brought to our attention that we have
Yeah,
2 duplicated pictures, so that'll be an easy fix.
so the announced vacancy, when's that going to be through?
What's that?
oh, the announced vacancy, it says November 26th. I wish it would be the 15th.
We can move that up.
Well, we certainly can move that up. If you're not doing the mailing, we don't need to
Right.
coordinate those 2 things.
Okay.
Yeah,
But we're
that's-
meeting the 13th to finalize, so I mean, it couldn't be the 14th.
No, we need a day in there.
So you can basically just post a job listing on those.
So you'd like us to start the posting on,
On the 15th, if that's a Thursday now, right?
yes,
So that's just a job
If you
search.
think that's doable.
I'm gonna ask Laura. Doable?
I think that's doable.
Kate? You're good to go.
That way we really are giving them 2 months to prepare this.
I do have in February, I'm a little concerned about having everything at the regular meeting. Not that I want to have another meeting if we don't absolutely need one, but I'm just looking at your notes, Bonnie, and it looks like, Sandy was saying special meeting to select the finalist and like to negotiate terms and stuff, and then at the regular meeting to actually approve the contract.
Right.
So do we really want to do all of that in the regular meeting? Because I kind of see why that would be
Yeah.
better to have a special meeting just for that, because that could get lengthy,
Yeah,
I think.
I guess that's what I was getting at a few minutes ago when we were talking about that, is that and maybe we don't have to decide that right now, but it seems to me that there is a chance we would want to have a special meeting before we just come to the meeting ready to offer a contract, you know. We would want to have a meeting where we discuss everything we've learned, or,
Maybe the week of the 18th, the Tuesday of that week. I agree.
Yeah. It does seem like really long. But that doesn't have to go on the, that doesn't have to go on this anyway, right, on the announcement?
Well, it probably should be.
The special meeting for
Yeah.
that?
We can put it in there.
No, the special
Put it on
meetings
there
are
as a
done.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can approve by a certain date, not, doesn't have to be that date.
Yeah, I was just looking at a schedule of,
Oh, we have March 18th on here, so we want to maybe change it.
Yeah, we'll have to change that.
Yeah, no, I have the new dates, so we'll work on that, getting those.
So is it enough just to say that at this meeting, we're saying, we think there might need to be a special meeting before that February regular board meeting? Maybe Laura would feel better knowing that we're open to that too, but I don't know, do we have to set that right now? Or maybe we should.
Well, if I'm gonna be proactive again, then you probably wanna set that for Thursday, the 21st, because you're going to need to give your negotiation committee time then on the 18th, 19th, and 20th to sit down with that individual and hammer out the contract, terms of the contract. And then bring it to you on the 21st, and then say, here's what we're going to,
I'm thinking of meeting even before they start working on the contract, just to tell them who to negotiate with. Right, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah.
So that even prior, after we've done the site visits and possible second interviews, at that point, a special meeting to, you know, I guess just consider everything that we've learned and make sure we're all kind of on the same page.
I don't think you can have that ready by the 25th, then I think you'd have to have a special meeting on March 4th, Monday, March 4th.
Why?
Why couldn't we meet the week of the 18th?
If you're gonna do, that's the week you're scheduled to have your second interviews if needed.
Right. Have we built too much time?
I don't think it would be a long meeting, but it would be, okay, you said second interviews will be the week of the 18th. Yeah, you know, that's why originally this had our site visit and second interviews a little earlier. And then it seemed like the February 25th was possible, but since we did move those out from where they were. So maybe, yeah, we're just not going to be able to do it on anything by the 25th. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Chuck, that we have to push it out?
I think just, I just know that, you need to get the person back here, and then you need to get a sense from you as a board what you're willing to offer, and then you need to,
Well, what about just if at that regular board meeting, we made our decision, this is the person we want to offer a contract to, and then the negotiating committee would have time to work, and we would have a special meeting March 4th, like you just said, to approve the contract. Does that put things in the right order?
yep, you could approve your finalist on the 25th of February.
Yeah.
Here's our finalist
And we have a week to negotiate the
contract, and then come together on March 4th for a special meeting.
That would make sense. Rather than saying we're not approving the contract, then we're just approving finalists. Laura, does that make sense to you? Does it look like there'd be a little more room to? So,
So you're gonna decide who the finalist is
On the
after,
on the 25th,
in the regular, at the regular meeting,
yes.
20th. Right.
and you will not have like discussed any final thoughts prior to that then?
I guess that's when we would discuss that. Right? That would be our meeting for our final
Yeah.
thoughts.
So like if it's down to 2 and it's like half and half split
Yeah, that's what I
during the
worry about
regular
too.
meeting, you're gonna kind of go back. That's my only thought is to
So
decide
you were
that.
kind of thinking that special meeting prior to the 25th was a good idea?
I
right?
think
Just to
so.
decide on a finalist? Yeah, I guess I still kind of like that too. I don't know. What rest do you think? And Joyce had said on the 18th, which is the holiday, so maybe
Yeah.
the 19th?
Yeah, the Tuesday, that's,
Okay.
and if you thought, Chuck had suggested 21st, didn't you?
So,
From the 19th until the 25th, would that be enough time to negotiate a contract? From a Tuesday to the next Monday?
Should be.
You think so?
I'm along for the ride.
okay, so February 19th would be your special meeting.
To select the finalist.
Yep.
And maybe we can get some more information from MSBA, you know, that's where they say determine contract parameters
Okay.
and negotiate.
Yeah, I could ask her,
During the meeting or,
I could ask her, yeah, how do we do that?
Because you typically look at what other superintendents are getting in the area and the benefits and so forth.
Correct.
Is that it?
Yep. We'd give that information to the negotiation committee. The only thing that I caution you on is where do you envision, in addition to doing site visits, that you would have a second interview? Because you're pretty much saying one and done, because you're gonna do the interviews, and then you're gonna do the site visits, and you're gonna have to make your decision without necessarily having the latitude of having a second interview.
Well, we finish interviews, the latest we're going to do them would be the 7th of February.
Right.
And then,
The 11th was your site visits.
I think second interviews, and what I understood Sandy to be saying was that they happen pretty fast. I mean, you decide, you know, I want to see these, we want to see these two people again, and you get them in as soon as
So
possible.
are you saying that you do your site visits February 8th through the 12th, and second interviews on the 13th and 14th, if needed?
If we have, if we're able to have the first interviews completed before the 7th, then we can move up our site visits.
Mhm.
Well, January 30th, maybe you want to just give yourself a week, January 30th through the 6th. February 6th would be your conduct your interviews. And then you could do your site visits 7th, 8th, and 11th if necessary, and second interviews on the 13th and 14th.
Yeah. And do we have to be so specific? I mean, it seems like almost site visits and second interviews could almost be going on kind of simultaneously. Could we just say site visits and second interviews from the 7th to the 15th, somewhere in there?
Okay, so you want to combine those?
Yeah, and that would give us.
Site visits and second interviews,
Mhm.
okay?
It just seems like when the time comes, we'll be more clear on what we need to do.
All right,
And then still our special meeting the 19th to decide.
Correct.
Okay. And then offer the position or approve the contract the 25th, but
Right.
still do it, okay. say,
Sure.
oh my gosh, what were we thinking? That's not gonna work. So we do get to look at it once more, although I know you want it solid for the brochure.
I think it's pretty solid.
Okay.
Yep, anybody have any other concerns, questions, or making sense? Okay, anything else?
I would invite you to think and reflect on what we talked about tonight, on how you want to, you'll have plenty of time here within the next 2 months to figure out how you want to do the interview process. But you want to come back that first week in January, and you want to be able to say to the teachers and the district support people, here's where we envision and how we envision you to be active in the interview process. So I would think by December, at the December board meeting, you'd want to say this is how we envision this process to work.
And that's probably.
And it sounds like there's flexibility, you could go either way. You could do the separate committees and let them do a 45-minute interview each, or you could just have them sit in here and everybody hears the same questions, gets the same information, and maybe that's the direction you want to go to, because then everybody's hearing the same thing.
And what I heard you saying is that you'd like me to ask Sandy about that as well. I think I
Well,
have 3 things now. Just ask her what she would, if she has any recommendations based on searches that she's been involved with.
I can see advantages to both avenues, but I do like, as I think this through right here on the spot, I like the fact that everybody's in the same room, everybody's hearing the same response,
Yeah.
everybody's picking up the same body language, tone, whatever it is.
I like that better than the multiple interviews.
Yeah.
I agree.
You're getting lots of nods, so that's done. That one was simplified.
Yes.
Then survey the staff.
And so.
Yeah, and we
Questions.
can go ahead and get started on that. We can have that ready for you.
To be part of the
So that.
questions we decide to ask.
I guess then the thing you would need to determine is how many teachers would you like to see?
Well, and it's an open meeting, so I mean, anybody could come.
But if
They
you're
will be
gonna allow
there.
them to ask questions, you need to designate
And I'm not sure, I thought Sandy was saying that
not to
the
have.
board
them-
has to ask the questions, that
They could give us the questions and
they can give us questions in advance, and they
Sure.
could give us feedback afterwards, which is, I guess I would find that really valuable.
That works for me, well.
If they had specific questions too, I mean, that could be something for the second interview too.
Right, yep. That's not going to probably get more specific.
Okay, everybody know where we're at?
It seems like a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's
It is.
the most important job we'll do.
Right, yeah, so I mean, that's the biggest job. Okay, we're back here Tuesday, 5:30, and then 2 weeks from tonight at 5:30 as well.
Do you want a motion to adjourn?
That'd be good.
I'll make that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
6:40.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Yes.
We will need it. I think a lot of luck is going to be.
Hope not.
seriously.
I know.
Frankly, that's a good vibe.
Good.
A lot of fires.
Well, be sure to tell them what a great job it is.
Absolutely.
What a wonderful board you have. And
I can ask it.
Thought that was interesting.
I know it's done very.
How was the temperature in your night?
Nice.
It's been what?